This meeting is being recorded.
Hi everyone, welcome. Feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat while we just wait for some more people to join. And we'll just wait till we've got a few more. We're up to 20 now. Okay, hi Michael, you're here to support Mark, I think.
Yeah. Hello.
Okay. Let's give it a couple more minutes to see how numbers go. We've talked before about having music, haven't we, Sean?
That was my idea, to have a CIM anthem.
Yeah, well, you get on it, Paul. It would be a good idea. And
I've got guitars here, we can give it a go.
We always have this slightly awkward moment right at the beginning where we've got people.
We need CIM elevator music.
Right, well, I've just let Max in, so maybe share this with Max.
I think some nice birds calling would be nice.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah, we're up to 25 and it's only 2 minutes past. Pretty good. We've got quite a few more people on, so we will just wait a little while. Somebody's got their microphone on with some funny buzzing in the background.
Just while we're waiting, thinking about music, I'm going to a bizarre gig tomorrow night with my son. Which, if you know the group Nirvana, my wife saw them at live years and years ago.
Very old, Paul.
Really good guns. But this is a group that played at Glastonbury, and it's Elvana. It's an Elvis-fronted Nirvana tribute act. How's that for weird?
That sounds awful.
Yeah, he dresses as Elvis and crowd surfs.
As far as a SIM elevator anthem, I'm not sure that will really hit the nail, Paul. Okay, 3 minutes past and we've got 26 people, so I'm inclined to say we can start. Just to let everyone know, we're recording already. The recording will be available on the YouTube channel later. I'd like to introduce Mark Nason, who is going to the main presenter this evening. Mark leads the program, the MSc Ecology and Land Restoration program at the Eden Project, part of Eden Project Learning, and he is delivering the Level 7 apprenticeship. You've now had 3 intakes, I think, Mark. So he's quite a lot of experience, and he's here to talk about his experience with it. So I'm going to stop screen sharing, turn my microphone off, and hand over to Mark.
Thank you, Debbie, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk tonight. And just to let everyone in the audience know, I'm home alone with 2 children, 2 dogs, and a cat. So there may well be some interruptions, as there may be for Debbie as well, at some point during the evening. And also to let you know, I can see from the participants that I've got 2 colleagues on the call, which is Michael Hunt, who is the program manager for the Level 7 Ecologist apprenticeship that we run at Eden Project Learning. We've also got Lorna Martin on the call, who is our head of apprenticeships and employer engagement, and at least 4 of our current apprentices, which is really good. So big thank you to apprentices for joining us tonight. So I'd like to go through the history of the program, how it's going so far, and any learning from it. I'll try not to talk for more than about half an hour. I've got probably too many slides, but most of them are pretty pictures. And we'll leave a bit of time for discussion at the end. But if you do have any questions that come up during the presentation, then feel free to put them in the chat box, and perhaps our apprentices on the call and my colleagues can answer those, especially if they're difficult technical questions that I wouldn't really want to answer anyway. So I'm just going to share my screen with you now, and hopefully you can all see that. So we've been running the apprenticeship at the Eden Project since 2021, I think, was when we had our first intake. So they're now into their second year of a 2-year program. And I thought what I would start by doing is looking at why we feel we actually need this different kind of delivery model, and what is the problem that this is designed to help us solve. So what is the program? What do we hope to achieve through running it? A little bit about who we are and the delivery model that we've chosen, so how we're doing it and how it's going so far. And apologies to the apprentices online, because I can see that at least 2 of you in the audience are also in that first photo. So there might be a bit of a theme recurring through the presentation today. So we have several problems. Almost a year ago, just over a year ago, SAIEM declared that we have a crisis in our sector because we have a severe shortage of experienced ecologists. The government have been concerned that a lack of skilled ecologists is hampering our ability to oversee biodiversity policies. And there are several reasons for this. One of them is a lack of recruitment into the ecology sector, particularly since the financial crash in 2008. We've got more people hopping between jobs to seek a better salary, and because some of those skilled positions aren't being filled, so people are perhaps stepping up in some instances before they're experienced enough to do so. And we also have the problem that it's a graduate career, and we have huge inequity of access, success and progression to higher education within the UK. So this is just a graph showing the entry rates from different English regions into university level study, aged 18 or 19 or so. And you can see that London at the top, and the region that Mike and Lorna and I are in, the southwest, at the bottom, is lagging massively behind. So it really makes a difference whether you are male or female, your ethnicity and your postcode, in terms of whether you even consider going into higher education. And so what's causing that? There are many different things that are causing that, and that really is the point of trying to introduce this type of work-based learning, to provide an alternative way of progressing through into ecology careers. It's even more stark if you look at things like this is data called Polar, which shows participation in university level study, and divides each different ward in England, Scotland and Northern Ireland and Wales based on the most and the least participation. And so whilst the overall average of people going to do some sort of university aged 18 or 19 is above 30%, if you look at the region that I'm sat in at the moment, around Cambourne, Redroof, populated areas of Cornwall, post-industrial mining regions, we have fewer than 20% of our young people go to do any sort of university level education. And within that, a massive gender gap. So you're almost twice as likely to go to do any sort of university level study if you're female compared to male. And an intersection there with multiple different measures of deprivation. So we've got a problem of getting people into the ecology sector, but it's a graduate career, and actually we have a problem of getting people to do degrees as well. So our intention is to try and train people to lead generation restoration. So we're in the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We desperately need to train new professionals, not just to be a part of that movement, but to lead it. And we also need to empower and upskill people who are already working in the sector to help us raise our ambitions and embrace the opportunities of quite a rapid period of change. So to do that, we need to reduce barriers to accessing training, and we need to embrace new models of delivery. And particularly exciting about the apprenticeship opportunity is knowledge exchange and how we can get that communication going between academics, people working in the sector, and apprentices who have a foot in both camps. So those of you who are colleagues from higher education institutions may well be familiar with theory of change models related to access, success and progression in higher education. And students on the call may also be familiar, because we talk about these a little bit in our project management and stakeholder engagement module. But we've got drivers of widening inequity of access to careers in the environmental sector and to higher education. And we've got drivers of biodiversity collapse and rapid climate change. And the problems that is giving us in terms of our ability to respond to that is a lack of skills in the ecology sector, an inequality of opportunity to careers in ecology, and that it means that we're failing nature and we're failing society. So those might be the problems, and the barriers that we therefore need to overcome include things like the cost of training, the accessibility and the flexibility of the delivery models that we choose, the capacity of our sectors, both ecology and environmental management and the education sector, the level of ambition that we have, and the well-being of people working in those sectors and seeking to enter them. So what we try to do is to think about interventions that we can put in place to improve things and reduce those barriers. And so our approach to that and the apprenticeship model is to think about how we engage employers, get employers to identify the knowledge, skills and behaviours that they feel that they need to get into the sector, and then to design new work-based learning models and different delivery models that meet the needs of employers and the sector, but also better meet the needs of the students by being more accessible and flexible and costing less. And so what we're trying to then achieve is that we fill some of the skills gaps, we reduce the skills shortages that we have in the sector, and as a result of that we improve the capacity of the sector, we improve our own well-being, and we improve our ability to adapt to climate change and to help nature recover. So that's the kind of top level philosophy, really, if you like, of the course, is that we want to reduce those barriers, and we think that this is one of several different approaches to doing that. And of course, apprentices aren't new. We've had apprentices as far back as the Middle Ages. We work in an organisation with a long history and a very substantial involvement in apprenticeships in many different subject areas, from hair and beauty to plant operations and construction, through to catering and into horticulture. But we have only recently had postgraduate provision in ecology that we could deliver through this model. So we're responding to the challenge of trying to do that. And what we're seeking to do through the programme is deliver the knowledge and skills and help our apprentices to develop the behaviours that are important to not just succeed in the SIG sector, but progress within the SIG sector and change the sector and lead the sector. So we have this concept of a skills pyramid where we have underpinning knowledge of project management and health and safety, ethical codes of conduct. Then we have specific technical and skills and survey skills, ID skills, report writing and data analysis and synthesis. And that will build up to actually informing best practice, restoring sites, designing programs of habitat creation, for example. And that will help employers to win business. It will help us to develop theories of the best way to do things. It will help us to shape policy. So we're really looking for our apprentices to be in a position not just to enter the sector, but to change it. And so one way of looking at that in terms of knowledge exchange we as academics will be encouraging our apprentices to engage with the current academic literature on the best evidence to underpin interventions. We'll also be encouraging apprentices to look at international standards and best practice, and then apprentices will be working with their employers to practice some of these skills in their workplace. And that sort of symbiosis leads to really good opportunities for our apprentices to then publish what they're doing, as in the case of this paper that some of our full-time students published last year, just talking about how we consider soil better in ecological restoration projects. But we really want to create those opportunities for apprentices to look at what's done globally, to look at what's done nationally, and then to look at where some of that translates and where there are opportunities to learn from the cutting edge literature and the way that things are done in other parts of the world. So what actually is the Level 7 Ecologist Apprenticeship? So it's a postgraduate program. It's designed to produce ecologists to be competent to work in a range of different organizations, and I'll give you some examples in a bit. It's very much a collaboration between the employer and the training provider. We certainly can't, in an online program with residentials, we don't have enough time to develop in the apprentices all of the skills and competencies and behaviours that they need. But we can put in place activities that promote their learning and help to develop their knowledge. So it's very much a collaboration. And it is written by employers for employers. So it's important to say that providers don't write apprenticeships. They're written by the group of employers that come together. And those employers define the core requirements and the core behaviours. So reads like the job description or the person specification for people working in the ecology sector. So some examples there. Core requirement number 14 is to be able to perform analysis and interpret scientific data generated during site surveys and desk-based studies, etc. And there's also then core behaviours in terms of taking responsibility for personal development. I just thought I'd start with some of the more boring bits, I guess, for me, but important and frequently asked questions. So the technicalities of doing an apprenticeship. What are the costs? So we as providers are paid up to £9,000. So the funding band is set by the Institute for Apprenticeships during the process of employers writing it. Levy paying employers will pay from their digital account. So if employers have an annual pay bill of more than 3 million, then they will be able to use the money that goes into their digital account to fund the programme. And if you are a non-levy employer, then you pay £450, I think, at time of writing, but Lorna can correct me if that's changed, because it does change quite regularly. And the rest is paid from the unspent levy pot that other larger employers are paying into and not then necessarily using all of. Apprentices pay nothing, so they pay no tuition fees, and our employers pay the travel and accommodation costs for our apprentices to come down here to Cornwall to join the residential programs, but we help them by making some recommendations about good places to stay. How much do apprentices earn? So you can pay apprentices as little as the minimum apprenticeship hourly rate, which is currently just more than £5. And then after the first year of the programme, because this is a programme where all the apprentices are over 19, that goes to the national living wage. But we don't have, to the best of my knowledge, any employers that would be paying those types of apprenticeship minimum wages because it's a graduate programme. So most employers will be attracting people into the programme by paying their usual starting salary, and the best employers will be building in increments linked to the achievement and the development of competencies of the programme during the 2 years. What's the time commitment? So apprentices are usually employed full-time or working more than 30 hours. They need to complete an average of 6 hours a week of what we call off-the-job training, which is a time when they are studying towards developing those apprenticeship competencies during their paid normal working week. So the traditional way of doing that might be a day release model, to spend a day a week at your local university or college, and then 4 days a week doing your day job, but you're paid for the full 5 days a week. But there's quite a lot of things that can count towards what we call the off-the-job training. So it includes the talk component, the time spent with us in online learning, other training activities done within the workplace, so CPD courses, shadowing or mentoring, and time to work on coursework or the MSc project. The important thing is that it has to be directly related to the apprenticeship competencies as they're listed. Oh, there's a dog. And so we asked our apprentices, and they report spending between the minimum of 6 hours a week up to about 15 hours a week and more when the pressure of assignments and project work is ramping up on course related activities. So the reality for most is that they're spending time outside of their working day on research and on their assignments, as well as the time that they're allowed within their paid working hours. One thing that's really good about the level 7 ecologist apprenticeship and the way that it was written is that there are 3 separate pathways. So they each have some core knowledge, skills and competencies that are shared. But then there is a scientist, a consultant and a landscape pathway, and they each have a set of specialist skills and competencies. So for example, if you are on the scientist pathway, then you would be expecting to develop a greater understanding of how to do statistical analysis in packages like R. And if you're a landscape ecologist, then there's more of a focus on spatial data and technical competency with GIS software. And that's really good in terms of flexibility, meeting the needs of employers, and also where we're using the apprenticeship to add a training element to people who are already employed in the sector. In terms of eligibility, employers can use the programme to recruit new apprentices into the organisation, or we can add it as a training component to existing employees. Usually those people would already have a level 5 or 6 qualification, so a degree level qualification, but they may have done an HND a few years ago and have developed some professional experience since. They should have a level 2 in English and maths, so equivalent of a GCSE or O-level grade C or current grade 4. And really, really importantly, they mustn't already be fully competent, because that's not the point. So this is one interview where, when we are trying to recruit apprentices, we want them not to be over-egging their skills and really, really trying to sell themselves in terms of being already competent in all these areas, because the point of the apprenticeship is to develop their competence so that they are working at level 7 in all of these areas by the end of the programme, and not trying to impress us at the beginning of the programme. And the idea, the ethos is to be as inclusive as possible, but it's really important that the day job gives opportunities to develop the practical competencies, because we can't do all of that as a training provider, especially when we're operating a remote delivery model. So it really is a partnership between the provider and the employer. So I just thought I'd give you a few examples of the different scenarios. So we frequently will get employers contacting us. They have a vacancy, they're interested in the apprenticeship, and they seek our help. So we can advertise together, we can give a boost to their adverts through social media, and we can interview together either at the same time, or we can do an academic interview perhaps after they've interviewed their preferred candidates. And in some cases we've shortlisted together as well to check eligibility before they get to the interview stage. So an example of a student that started in the last cohort in September is Jenny, recruited by Yorkshire Dales National Park, and we help them to draft the job advert, to do a bit of the shortlisting. And actually, just to give you an idea, that those of you that experience difficulties in recruiting people into the sector, adding that apprenticeship opportunity there resulted in 64 good applicants for that job position. So actually Jenny did really well. Another way that it works is we might have an employer who has been hiring seasonal ecologists, and one or two are particularly standing out and they want to progress them into a full-time job role. And so the apprenticeship is a really good opportunity for that progression. And we've done that with James, working at the Ecology Co-op in West Sussex. And then often we will have students contacting us almost more than we can keep up with, I would say, looking for opportunities. And we will tell them, ring an employer, have a look on Indeed, see what job vacancies are being listed, and ask them, have you considered an apprentice for this job role? And so a good recent example of that would be Jenna, who came to see us on an open day, interested in a full-time MSc program, and actually the apprenticeship was a really good fit. So she rang up Cornwall Environmental Consultants and was able to start the apprenticeship with them. On the other hand, it's really nice when we can get new people into the sector using the apprenticeship, but it's also really good to add as a training element to people who are already employed and allow them to specialize in a different area or aid with their own progression and help fill some of those skills gaps that they might have. So as long as people are not already fully competent at level 7 and their job role is appropriate, then we can add the apprenticeship to their existing role. And we've done that for people working in the Woodland Trust, Environment Agency, Natural England, and perhaps assistant ecologists who are working in local authorities, and it provides an opportunity for them to progress. And a couple of slightly more tricky examples, mainly just to emphasize that a really important thing with this program is spending a decent amount of time on initial advice and guidance. So we might have a biodiversity technical specialist in the Environment Agency. They might already possess a master's degree and a relevant degree, but they don't have GCSE in English. Are they eligible? It depends is the question. We have apprentices on the program who already possess a master's degree, but if the master's degree is in a substantially different subject area, then that's fine. But if they don't have their level 2 English or maths, then they need to complete that alongside the program or before commencing the program to be able to achieve the apprenticeship. One that comes up increasingly frequently is people who are perhaps working in a policy or a more desk-based role. They'd really benefit from the training and the knowledge in the program, you know, the ability to learn more about ecosystem services and flood mitigation and environmental policy and law, but they need to have sufficient opportunities to develop the practical competencies and the survey skills on the apprenticeship. And if that can't be arranged, then we would say, no, the apprenticeship isn't right for you. But it might be possible for you to do some of these MSc modules using the same delivery model for CPD. But we do have a really nice example recently of a policy specialist in DEFRA who was able to arrange a secondment to a Natural England team to then gain sufficient practical experience to make her eligible for the apprenticeship. So it's quite good to help people move within organisations, as you know, when you're looking at succession planning. But that initial advice and guidance is really important, because we might expect to spend 3 or 4 hours or more speaking to prospective apprentices and their employers before we make a decision that it's the right programme for all concerned. And there's quite a big time commitment for providers in terms of doing that. So that's a little bit about the generic aspects of what the programme is, who are we and how we deliver it. So Eden Project Learning is a relatively new educational partnership between the Cornwall College Group, which is one of the largest college groups in the country, and the Eden Project. So the Eden Project is a series of big biomes in a china clay pit in Cornwall, housing the world's largest indoor rainforest, Mediterranean biome. But actually, really importantly for this programme, is we've got a really good selection of habitats around the site, including restored grasslands, ASIG grassland, pasture, orchards. We've got an ombrotrophic bog, and we've got really good access in the area to a large amount of land restoration sites, given that Cornwall is the county with the biggest proportion of its land surface technically classified as derelict, due to that legacy of mining in the region. So we are just going into our 8th year, I think, of delivering higher education. We started with undergraduate degrees in plant science and horticulture, and I think it's fair to say we've probably got the largest cohort of undergraduate plant science students now in the country, and we're now up to about 250 students with the addition of the MSc and the apprenticeship. So a happy bunch of students in the main, and then in 2020 we started to run the apprenticeship initially with a small group of 7 students, one of whom, Emily, is online, who were very much guinea pigs because we were the first people to run it. It was a new course and a new delivery model. So the way that we do it, we deliver a 180 credit taught master's degree, which is validated by the University of Plymouth. And we do it as 4 residential field courses with 2 entry points each year, one in the autumn and one in the spring. That created a bit of head scratching at the university. How can you start a master's degree in April? And we've learned quite a lot from doing that as well, possibly as another 2 people on the call will attest to. But it really is important to have more than 1 entry point a year, because if an employer has a need in November and you say, well, you're going to have to wait nearly a year to start in the next September, then that's not really gonna work. The modules are delivered online in between the 4 residential field courses, and they average at about 3 hours contact per week during the academic year, which is slightly extended compared to the traditional 30-week HE year. And then we help to supervise on a one-to-one basis to develop the MSc projects. There should be regular meetings with an apprenticeship advisor, who will also catch up with the apprentice's line manager as part of those reviews, and also with the program manager to help explain how to record the development of competencies. And just to give an idea of numbers, so we started with 7 in 2021, and we've currently got 46 apprentices on program. We've got 2 withdrawals since we started, one of whom it wasn't the right time, wasn't the right workload, it was the wrong fit, and one of whom was actually made redundant and decided to carry on with the program but drop the apprenticeship element and do it as a part-time master's degree student because they were in a position to be able to do that. And so we've got a range of different employers, Environment Agency, different local authorities, small ecological consultancies. We've got Balfour Beatty in there, Yorkshire Dales National Park, and more coming on stream all the time, with more expected to start in the spring. The way that we structure the master's degree, so students have to do a master's degree. They can't complete the apprenticeship without doing a master's degree because employers said that a master's degree was needed in this apprenticeship. And actually that's really good, I think, because it helps to sell the apprenticeship for the people doing it to know that they've got that embedded qualification and that they can graduate with a master's degree and the potential progression that provides for them. So we have 120 credits of taught modules, and we have a 60 credit research project, and we kick off those taught modules during the residentials, and then towards the end of the course there's an opportunity for the students to come down for a bit of an MSc project writing retreat and to present their final work. In terms of assessment, the MSc takes 2 years to complete on a part-time basis, and then they haven't finished because we then need to make sure that they've satisfied the requirements for endpoint assessment within 6 months of having completed the MSc. So we say that when they've completed the MSc, they're at the gateway where we can call for endpoint assessment. There are some changes in this area. So there is a move towards integrating that endpoint assessment within the structure of the course itself. So that's going to lead to a few differences perhaps between our first cohort of apprentices who are getting closer to this point and any new providers who are wishing to run this program. And in terms of professional recognition, the course aligns with the appropriate level of SIEM membership, but doesn't automatically lead to it. So there's pretty pictures, because that's probably far too much talking already. We run the 2 residentials each year. The really good fun one, I think, and hopefully apprentices online can comment too, is the one that we run in September, where we really try and get the group to gel. We do some icebreakers, we introduce them to the structure of the course, we do the induction bits, but we also spend as much time as possible out in the field, meeting practitioners, traveling to different field sites, and introducing the context for the assessments and the online learning that they'll then be doing until the next residential. So it takes quite a lot to organize with the sorts of numbers that we have and the number of field visits that we want to fit in. We make sure that we start by trying to get the groups talking together. We do the inevitable icebreakers because it's really, really important on this type of program. It is quite intense. The WhatsApp group is established on the first day, and it won't stop pinging you notifications for about 2.5 years after that point, because apprentices really do form a really strong supportive network. We organise that residential to include as many field visits as possible, and we try and make sure that those activities are aligned to the learning outcomes for the master's degree, but also linked to the knowledge, skills and behaviours that are identified as part of the apprenticeship standard itself. So our students will see these 2 documents, and then we have an epic week staff plan as well that shows how we're going to make sure that we can move everyone around Cornwall and do it safely and have fun at the same time. So we spend a little bit of time at Eden. I think apprentices have commented that they would have liked to spend a little bit more time at Eden, because we spent so much time out and about that we didn't actually spend that much time in the biomes, but completely upstaged by rural partridge every time we go in the rainforest biome. We go and look at our local partners working on national projects. So we spent time with Dynamic Dunescapes. We spent time with Cornwall Wildlife Trust looking at management of special area of conservation and SSSIs in the region. So this is looking at management of habitat for marsh fritillary butterfly on a site which is Cornwall Wildlife Trust's biggest nature reserve, and happily just up the road from us at Eden. We have some pasties, not the best pasties, the feedback was, so I'll take that on board because that's very serious. We spent time at Cabilla Cornwall looking at rainforest restoration, temperate rainforest work, and again just getting to know each other, and an evening barbecue and beaver walk at Woodland Valley Farm, the home of the Cornwall beaver project, and luckily we were able to see some as well. There was quite a beavery theme to some of the field trips during that week. We're trying to get that balance between learning and actually gelling together as a group. We visited Derek Gow at Rewilding Coombs Head, which is always an interesting experience. And in the evening, we spent time doing some lab sessions with an optional bat survey, and also just thinking about the importance of soil in ecology as well, and just giving us an opportunity to develop some theory and knowledge of lab techniques. And we take a few devices out with us in the field and break a few devices because of the amount of rain and interaction with friendly pigs. I put this as one on, and that's why I'm wearing my colourful shirt today. We use the residentials as an opportunity to do some of the assessments. So leading up to this residential, our April starting apprentices have been preparing group presentations on how we determine success criteria in ecological restoration projects, and this group were trying to outshirt me, so I'm hoping that I've again gained the upper hand tonight with this one, which was actually a present from my students. So that's the autumn residential. The one that we run in the spring is focusing on the GIS and survey methods, and some of the biosecurity and invasive species work that we do. And it's really making sure that the apprentices are getting some practical experience. By the end of that week, they're pretty exhausted because there's a full day in the field, but most of the week is getting to grips with the GIS software, so that by the end of the week, everyone can create GIS databases and interrogate them to produce useful outputs for site management plans, for example. And that is then submitted for assessment.
I'm not sure. Your screen seems to be stuck for me. I've still got two windows, one saying GIS and survey and one saying biosecurity and
that's the one we're on.
Oh, okay. It just sounded as if you were talking about pictures.
No, there are some pictures now though. So we're lucky that we've got some good local sites. So we focus the GIS module around Carlogos Downs, which is a heathland restoration site established in the mid-90s by Phil Putwain, and has since received very little management until earlier this year, with some G7 legacy funding. Management started, so it's such a really nice time to look at the impact of management or lack of management on heathland restoration project. So we spent time doing surveys, gathering the data that we can then bring back and learn how to use QGIS to produce various different map outputs. And that's another brief bit of learning there, in that it's really important that apprentices have access to the free software, but not everyone's organizational IT infrastructure allows them to download and install that software. So getting that in place before they arrive is a useful thing to do as well. And then whilst they're here, we get them to do poster presentations. So this is Hannah from the Woodland Trust, and this is Sian from North East Links County Council, presenting their research into producing site management plans for invasive species. So we have a bit of a mini conference, and this year we were lucky to have Sally Haynes from SIEM and also Bethany Walder from the Society for Ecological Restoration pop up online and give a talk to our apprentices. So that's the kind of fun stuff we do during the residentials. And then in between that, we have weekly online learning, about 3 hours, and we use that to cover the theoretical content on the module. And we also have students giving presentations online where that's required, evaluating their practice against international standards and against the current research, and really importantly, sharing their experience. So several apprentices have commented that coming together on a Monday morning is the best part of their week. They get to speak to, if they're in the Woodland Trust, they get to speak to people in DEFRA and the Environment Agency. People working in a local authority get to speak to the environmental consultants and regulators, and it's just fantastic for sharing knowledge and experience. We say that there's a lot of talent in the room, and that is the best thing about the apprenticeship for me, is that ability to learn from each other. We have a little bit of fun as well. Sorry to Emily, who's on the call, I think. And we're doing a bake-off for World Soils Day, so there are opportunities to build that wider community in terms of the online learning. And then they do a lot of work. So there are usually 2 assessments for each 20 credit module, and they might be 2,500 word reports, oral presentations, poster presentations, but we pride ourselves in giving a good amount of feedback to help people develop throughout the program, and that's something that we can do quite effectively online. And then one thing that really excites students but also worries students in equal measure is their substantial research projects that they will be doing the bulk of in the second year of the programme, but it never hurts to start thinking about them early on. And we haven't had any students, any apprentices complete projects yet, because we're just in the second year with the first cohort. But we do have apprentices who have started projects in various different areas. And the type of work that we support with our students are things like the use of eDNA for plant species detection. And I had to put that one on there because we just had that work confirmed that it's been accepted for publication in Restoration Ecology today. So I thought that was a really nice output from the programme. Projects that help to inform practice within the workplace are ideal. So apprentices have good access occasionally to trial sites, to species or to processes that their employer would like a view on how to improve. So it's really good for opening new areas of business or refining practice. And in this case, for example, there's a triple SI on the Isles of Scilly, which is quite tricky to determine exactly how to manage it. So an alternative approach was to produce a management plan that was based on options for carbon storage and to see how that impacted the designation of the site. And we have some interest in paleo ecology and how we can reconstruct past environments by doing things like peat core sampling and looking at the proportion of cereals and trees and looking at that longer term narrative for sites. We try to add in some optional extras where we can. That helps the apprentices with their off-the-job training. So for the last 2 years, we've invited Mark Duffel down to run native plant ID and survey workshops, and we intend to keep doing that where we can. And that's it. So that's how we deliver it in terms of advantages and disadvantages for providers and for prospective apprentices. Just a little bit of a reflection on some learning from running the program so far. That initial advice and guidance is really critical. It takes time and a bit of sensitivity. It can take, in contrast to many universities that might not even interview students if they've got the correct entry criteria, we'd spend several hours with each prospective apprentice and their employer before they start. And if we're actively involved in recruiting with the employer, we might spend much longer than that. So you do need to have that commitment and that resource in place if you're a provider seeking to run this program. It's a really excellent opportunity to match prospective apprentices to employers and to get people into the sector. So we've definitely helped employers to fill vacancies, and adding that training element makes it more attractive for people to go into that job role. But it's also really good for upskilling existing ecologists, and the choice of pathway really helps there. So if you've had someone who has been working in consultancy for a while but's never done any landscape or GIS or any more of the scientific competencies, then there's the ability to choose the correct pathway and help them develop in a slightly different direction. There are no tuition fees, which is great for the learners, but at £9,000 per apprentice, it's not so great for the providers, given the level of infrastructure and tutorial support that we would put around an apprenticeship program, and in comparison to the fees that you might charge for a full-time master's degree. But we've shown that good numbers are possible with the right delivery model. You are opening yourself to scrutiny by Ofsted, which can put some higher education institutions that are perhaps less familiar with that level of scrutiny off. But there's a really good opportunity there for higher education to learn from further education and vice versa. And with the way the Office for Students is going in terms of regulation, actually getting on the front foot with that and embracing some of the Ofsted approach is perhaps not a bad thing for universities to do. And projects are a really fantastic opportunity for apprentices to improve the evidence base behind the processes within the workplace, the techniques they use in the field, the policies they implement, but it's important to manage expectations regarding the academic freedom that apprentices have to follow. So if we have an apprentice that's interested in the restoration of mangrove swamps, that might be a difficult one to perhaps align to the apprenticeship competencies, but would be fine for a full-time student. And also access to facilities. So we do bring them down to Eden and show them some whizzy kit, and then perhaps if they're based in Yorkshire or Lincolnshire, it's not necessarily that easy to then access some of that analytical capability. But there are a whole range of projects that can be done in the field anyway. And the absolute best bit is all of them, and seeing them on the Monday morning and getting them to share their experiences, their case studies, the sites that they're working on. So there's a huge amount of talent in the room, and I'll end there and just open it up to any questions, and I'll stop sharing. Have you gone to sleep, Debbie?
Hi, Paul, did you have a question?
Yeah, just great. Thanks very much, Mark. It's sounds really exciting. I'd love to do that course. It sounds wonderful. Someone who runs an MSc in Ecology and Environmental Management. It sounds brilliant. Sadly, our place let its apprenticeship registration lapse, much to my distress. Could you tell us, because you got your course validated by the University of Plymouth, what were the selling points that you gave to the University of Plymouth? You know, why? Because I've had challenging feedback from our place because of the snob value. I'll be quite honest, right? Of this, which I think is just terrible. But what were the selling points? I'm looking for some help.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, I mean, one selling point for the university is that working with a college partner brings that whole level of existing expertise around apprenticeships and around the quality assurance and the approaches and the funding and and everything else that a university, not all universities, but most universities are less familiar with. So I think that's helpful, but also the opportunity to genuinely collaborate on widening participation. And that's something where we have a long history of working with partner universities, because we don't have degree awarding powers. We have foundation degree awarding powers, but to do anything above level 5, we need that validation by a university partner. But we do all of the teaching, and they help with the approval and the quality assurance. There is a significant downside for us in that our apprentices, our students of the University of Plymouth, so we have to pay annual registration fees to the university too. So if you're taking that £9,000 value that we get per apprentice, and then you're paying £850 or so to the university for each of the 2 years of the programme, and then you're setting aside money for external assessment potentially as well, it becomes more challenging financially. But I think universities and colleges really should be working together within their region to provide these more flexible delivery models. So I think if you can use that argument around access and participation plans and widening participation, I think that's quite a good one to do. But also, I guess, sometimes reassuring universities that you're not competing with directly comparable provision, but that you're providing an alternative, and that's augmenting recruitment rather than pulling students away from one course in a university and over to your different delivery model. So there's inevitably some politics and some delicate negotiations surrounding that. But I think it's worked very well for us, and we're certainly, for example, looking ahead now to 2024 at introducing the next level 7 apprenticeship, which will be a soil science master's level apprenticeship, which is just being written at the moment. And based on the experience of working with us, Plymouth are already keen to look at doing that.
Thank you. Really interesting. Very helpful.
Sorry. Thanks, Mark. Tilly, I think you've had your hand up next.
Hi, yes. I was just really interested to know what the process is as an employer to start getting involved in this kind of thing, because we've taken on over the last year, we've taken on 2 graduates from a very small company. And when we were taking on one earlier this year, I was looking into the apprenticeship and I couldn't quite determine from the website whether it was open to any employer or whether it was an Eden project thing or what exactly it was. So we didn't end up sort of exploring it further. So I'd just love to know what we need to do to make that happen, because there's a possibility of taking someone else on, and that seems like a good route for us.
Yeah, I don't know if I should defer to Lorna here, but it's absolutely open to any employer. Did you want to say anything else, Lorna, about the next steps as an employer?
No. Mark's absolutely right. It is open to any employer that can meet the criteria in terms of meeting the knowledge, skills, and behaviours needed in the apprenticeship. So I mean, the best first step is to contact Mark or the apprenticeship team at Cornwall College, just to kind of, so we can start those conversations really to make sure that you can fulfil the criteria, and then we can help support you in terms of recruitment if you need that.
Okay, no, that's great. I mean, we already have an annual CPD budget for our graduates. They get £500 a year. So this sort of thing works well within our consultancy framework. The website just really wasn't clear to me that it was open to people, if that makes sense. So that's great to know.
Just to add to what Mark and Lorna have said, and as the apprenticeship learning program manager, and along with the rest of the team, we have extensive dialogue with employers as they contact us. We're taking on an assistant ecologist. Can we put that person into the apprenticeship? And I will have extensive conversations with the apprentice, the potential apprentice, with the HR manager, with the line manager, and all in an attempt to explain to them what exactly is delivered by the apprenticeship, as Mark has just explained to you all, but what is required of the job role for someone to be eligible. So give us a call and we'll start talking, basically.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Lorna. Antonio, I think you had your hand up next.
Yes, I found myself in similar situation that Paul was. So to give you a bit of context, I'm a principal lecturer at Nottingham-Trent University. I'm the program's lead I coordinate all the postgraduate provision within my school, but in particular, I'm the course leader for the MSc in Biodiversity Conservation, accredited by CAM, with a direct career exit into ecological consultancy. So we explored this back in 2019. And I found exactly the same problems with my university that Paul found. And actually, we started all the process, and then COVID hit, and politics moved somewhere else. But one of the issues that we had at the beginning was the lack of clarity about who would assess the end assessment point. And probably,
Can I just come in there and say, it's all changing, Antonio. There is going to be no endpoint assessment. Right. Probably from, basically from when I've written it.
That simplifies things enormously.
Yes, it will simplify things enormously. We're hoping to, the Institute of Apprenticeships, the decision has been made that all of these level 7s are going to be integrated in future. There is going to be no need for an endpoint assessment. What is required is that the endpoint assessment tasks are incorporated within the programme as assessment items. But could you contact me about this maybe in January, by which time they will have worked out exactly what they want, because at the moment it's slightly unclear.
Okay.
but
Yeah,
it will not be a problem from the next intake.
by all means, I don't know how the politics have moved. Maybe I go back and they will shut my mouth very quickly.
I'll put my email in the chat.
And Mark and guys is excellent staff. I would love to see it working. Actually, I'm an external examiner for Cornwall College. So I might visit around in probably February, March. So I might knock your door.
Oh, you're very welcome. Very welcome.
And if you open your drawers, I might just steal half of your materials. Though.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put you on the spot, but obviously you've heard it all from me, kind of bigging everything up. But we've got apprentices on the line as well. So are any of you brave enough to say anything about experience so far? Sorry, Emily.
No, that's fine. I don't mind. I don't know if anyone's got any specific questions. But no, generally, I've found the course, for me, I originally graduated about 15 years ago in environmental science and then had a career change. So for me, it's given me the capacity to basically upskill myself, as well as giving my employer really valuable skill set. So we can go off at the end of a Monday and have a discussion. All right, what have you learned this week? And it's enabled me to get involved in lots of really nice cross projects with the Wildlife Trust. It's hard work. Like I wouldn't say, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's a lot of hours and it's a lot of commitment. But for me, it's definitely worth it. Professionally now, I feel so much more comfortable and confident in what I'm doing.
Thank you, Emily.
Mark, there's a question in the chat from Nikki Court, who says she's managing an environmental record centre. Is it possible to mix and match some of the modules across the three themes? Now, it's not quite.
Yes, so
how it works.
No, so the advantage here was I was talking to Debbie when the apprenticeship was written at the same time as we wrote the master's degree. So what we've been lucky to be able to do is to align the two as well as we can. So actually all of the core knowledge, skills and behaviours for all three of the pathways are developed through the modules on the MSc. So for example, regardless of whether you're doing the scientist pathway and the landscape pathway, all of our students will do both a GIS module and a data analysis and statistics module. The trick of it is making sure that in the workplace, if you've chosen one of those three specialist pathways, then you've got particular opportunities to develop your competencies for those specialist areas, because we can cover them, but we can't develop them enough to the level required over the 2 years of the program. So that's where that partnership comes in. So a good example that would be our apprentice who's just joined the Yorkshire Dales National Park. They're very much working at a landscape scale on nature recovery projects, and their employer is particularly keen that they bring that expertise in spatial data and GIS and mapping, but they'll still do everything else as part of the taught master's degree, but they'll spend more time putting that element of the course into practice.
I think we're running out of time, but I can see one more hand up. Helen, have you got a quick question?
Oh, hi everyone. Yeah, my name's Helen and I'm the ecologist at Cornwall Council. And I think I've had some email comms with some people here. Any of the apprentices or Emily, I'd be really interested, as quite a large employer, what are the key things that we can think of to provide apprentices with a successful and enjoyable experience? What can we do in readiness when we're thinking about putting ourselves forward for that?
I mean, from my point of view, it's time and understanding about the additional on the job hours and the training. So I'm CEC, and they are amazing with saying, you know, okay, we've got this person going out and doing this job. Do you want to shadow them? And it's allowing me to build up my hours and build up my skill set that way. So I think that for me is the key thing that you need. It's the time and just to allow the apprentice to develop their skills, and not a kind of expectation that you go straight in and hit the ground running and it's just they're an additional person. It's that acknowledgement that they're still a learner, and that's I'm really fortunate. Obviously, you know CEC well, really fortunate with them in that they're allowing me to do that.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Can I just add to what Emily's just said? So as the apprenticeship program manager, one of my jobs is to ensure that the students, that the apprentices compile what at the end of the 2 years is a sufficient number of hours on what we call their off-the-job log. So for the apprentices, if their employer understands that they need to compile somewhere between 200 and 300 hours of off-the-job hours, which are in some sense what we might call training aligned to the apprenticeship, that enormously helps the apprentice. So so that if they don't have to go and explain that time and time again to their employer, but the employer realizes what the obligations placed on the apprentice is by this apprenticeship, that's very helpful. And of course, we can have a dialogue with willingly with employers at any time to explain to them any amount of detail on that.
That's great. Thanks ever so much.
Unmute. I just to wrap up, I'll just share my screen. Hopefully you can see it. We hold these discussion meetings on the third Thursday of every month in term time. In theory, because you've booked onto this event, you should get a copy of the newsletter, which comes out at the beginning of January, and that will give you details and also other items of interest to the academic special interest group. In January, we've got using drones for habitat surveys. I think we've already got 150 people booked on that, but we are running a waiting list. February, badgers and TB by Des Delahaye, and in March we're having a ASIG members meeting. And just in case you're not aware, the Higher Education Programme Award and the Student Award are both still open until the 21st of November. It's a good opportunity to promote both your programme and any students' projects. So either students can put it forward, the entry form does need signing by your supervisor, or if you've supervised any particularly good projects, you can put them forward. Both entry forms are really short and simple, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem. More information at the awards, just SIEM Awards, and you should get that information. For any SIEM members who aren't already signed up to the Academic Special Interest Group, our role really is to try to bring together the academic community and the practitioner group to share information and to try to involve the two more closely together. So you can sign up in your preferences, and you don't have to be a member to come to these events, and you should get information if you've signed up. So if that's everything, I'd like to stop sharing and say thanks again to Mark and his team, Lorna and Mike. I think it's really helpful to have that, you know, the learned experience from you delivering it. And yes, I'm going to be on writing that integrated bit in the near future. It's not quite clear what they want yet. So yeah.
Thanks, Debbie.
Okay, so bye everyone.
Okay, thank you for coming, everyone.
Thank you.